It's from Ville on Blue Sky. With Lyon manager Paulo Fonseca receiving a 9-month ban for squaring up to a referee, Arne Slot telling Michael Oliver that if Liverpool don't win the league, it'll be his fault, and with Jose Mourinho crying foul play nearly every week in Turkey, is there a crisis of trust and respect towards refereeing in football?
It's certainly a hot topic because it's a regular topic at the moment, isn't it? And it does seem that the friction between officials and players, managers and fans is at an all-time high point. It might be that it always feels like this and it's just sort of, kind of in vogue at the moment. But the Fonseca thing is crazy for so many reasons. The length of the ban is absolutely mad. You would think that he actually headbutted him. He didn't. It's terrible. The way he behaved was really, really bad. But this is, I imagine that will come down over time. But I suppose that's a separate conversation. I wonder if part of this is because of VAR and if this is a knock-on effect where there is an expectation now that most things are going to be correct. So if a manager or a player or even a fan feels a decision's gone against them and that decision is not an interpretation of the referee, but is something that is wrong, then it's a bit more emotive and people get a bit more kind of angry about it. And obviously that leads to kind of conspiracy theory style thinking. Obviously, VAR was never going to come in and fix absolutely everything. No one ever said it was. I think most people know that it's not going to, but sometimes in the moment, perhaps frustration spills over because, these things happen very, very quickly, don't they? They're very emotive. Like Arne Slot talking about the Michael Oliver thing was very interesting after the fact. Weeks later, he kind of apologised about it and said, obviously I'm not feeling those emotions now, and I should have conducted myself better. But that's what's interesting about this, I find, and it's a wider thing than the way referees are treated. I think it's just more about emotion in football. There's not really any other walk of life where you would analyse an emotion that a person had 2 days after they had it, in very, very different circumstances. And in those circumstances, of course, things look a bit more extreme, and of course they look a bit sillier. And I think that's a factor, of course. But yeah, I think it does feel like it's getting worse, doesn't it? Because I think the more it happens, the more other people are emboldened to do it because it's just become the norm of how you speak to a referee almost.
Yeah. Well, maybe Fonseca, it's a huge ban in France, obviously trying to make an example of him, you would say. What do you think about this, Luke?
Yeah, I think, on Fonseca, it's not surprising the ban has been large and long because they have to make an example. They can't be seen in any way to let that kind of aggressive behaviour towards a referee. I appreciate he didn't headbutt him, but there was physical contact, and it is disgraceful.
Well done, you didn't headbutt him.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
But I think Jim's touched on something there. I think the VAR's definitely a part of it because VAR, it was billed as making refereeing decisions better, but it's arguably made it worse. And even if the decisions are then eventually correct anyway, it still has added a layer of
friction, right?
Yeah, but also an undermining of the referee. That we talked about Michael Oliver again in the Crystal Palace Millwall game in the FA Cup when Jean-Philippe Mateta was taken out, and the way that Oliver refereed that incident was obviously incompetent. But part of the reason he was incompetent in there is because he was expecting VAR to bail him out anyway. Like he didn't feel like he had to go to his pocket and pull out the red card because he thought, well, VAR will clear it up. There's no point me doing that. So that's made it, I think, more difficult because refereeing is now almost. It was always controversial. It was always a lightning rod for disrespect and for a lack of satisfaction for what's happening in a game, but now you're adding another layer of lack of authority on there as well. They're not perceived to be as authoritative as they were, which is obviously going to make them weaker, which means they're more open to this kind of stuff. And I also think that what it does as well is it serves to undermine what is a lot of the time pretty fair criticism of a poor performance. And we would, I guess, take the attitude here, or I certainly would, that if a player plays badly, we'll say it and we'll probably take the piss out of them because that's the show. And I think it's the same for the referee. I think I probably went pretty hard on Michael Oliver last week, and I'm just trying to combat the idea that maybe some of the comments that come back about this show will be that, well, you're just as bad. I'm trying to kind of head that off by saying that actually, if a referee isn't competent enough to ensure the safety of a player, i.e. in Michael Oliver's case, doesn't even stop the game and Mateta's clearly badly injured to his head, you've got to say that. You can't not say that because you're worried that referees will feel upset about it. You have to say that. But I think far too often it goes over the line into unacceptable shit, and there's a load of examples of this. I can remember not that long ago, I mean, it feels like a long time ago, but in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that long ago when, a referee would give a poor decision against an England team in a tournament, and then the Sun would be publishing his address and stuff like that. I think it was Erzmeyer, the referee, had that happen to him.
That's surely a crime in itself. It's so bad.
I share it through his letterbox.
Yeah, we whispered it.
It's always nice to hear from you, though. That's the confusing thing.
I mean, it would be a crime to approach him in some kind of. I'm pretty sure Tom Henning of Rabo in that Chelsea-Barcelona game that time in the Champions League with the Drogba, it's a fucking disgrace thing. I think that Chelsea fans didn't cover themselves in glory on that either. So it's a complicated issue. Because you have to be able to find a way of articulating your dissatisfaction with something in a situation where the stakes are pretty high. Arne Slot would be, trying to win the Premier League here. It's a big deal. Michael Oliver's having a terrible season. I think that's probably fairly uncontroversial to say that. But also, in Fonseca's case, it kind of goes over the line. And then just the final thing I'd say before I come back to you, Marcus, is just that the thing that Jim didn't mention there, but he touched on it, and I think is a factor, it's just the way society is now. Just the way that people find it very difficult to know generally what's true and what isn't, which makes them more susceptible to conspiracy theory and to thinking that the world is somehow geared against them or their team or whatever.
More tribal, isn't it?
Yeah, that's definitely more tribal. So I think that obviously plays into it too. So the question is there a crisis of trust and respect towards refereeing in football? I think there's probably a crisis of trust and respect towards authority generally in society now, and that plays into it. But all those other things I've mentioned kind of come into the mix as well. But we have to find a way, actually, as a community of football fans, football enjoyers, whatever you want to call us, to be able to criticise referees on the kind of validity of their performances rather than thinking there's other stuff going on or taking it to a physical level in the case of Fonseca.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there is a crisis of trust, but I think the points you've made are fair and right. I think this is a conversation we will continually have because, there will be some outstanding examples. I mean, talking about Jose Mourinho in Turkey, I understand why Villa's brought that in, but it's Jose Mourinho. So I was kind of like, just
sort of at war with the whole country.
He's added, and I said this when he took the job, he's added, I think Andy and I were talking about this, it might have been the show with you as well.
I remember it, yeah.
He's added a layer of almost, what Mourinho's very good at is tapping into the zeitgeist. And the zeitgeist for a club like Fenerbahce of that size, who haven't enjoyed a massive amount of success, is kind of absolutely ripe for him doing all this kind of weird crypto-fascistic stuff.
Yeah.
And referees are definitely a part of that. But you're right to say, I mean, that's just Mourinho all over.
Yeah, and Arne Slot telling Michael Oliver that, I think maybe you said it as well, that the managers will have said stuff to referees. We've seen that loads over the years. Not that it makes it right, but we've seen that. So I think that maybe there's been a couple of explosive examples of late, but I think this is just the normal circus of football. But I do take the point, though, that VAR and the current state of things in wider society have maybe added a little bit more to it. So I hope
Ferguson used to do a pretty good line in it way back in the day.
I mean, come on. Yeah, I mean, how many managers can we talk about?
The greatest ever undermining of a referee that Ferguson did was when he said that Alan Wiley was booking players just to get a rest because he wasn't fit enough.
Yeah. I mean,
that's amazing. That's amazing.
It's sort of brilliant and disgraceful.
Yeah.
And it's an emotive game, isn't it? We talk about this a lot. We want players to be feeling the emotions that they're feeling during a game, and then suddenly switching out of that mode to be incredibly respectful to an authority figure is at times very difficult for players to manage, clearly, because of how often they fail at it.
But also, where do you draw a line, right? Because I think that you've got a situation. I mean, one of the things that Mourinho said, I think, which from memory, is that he would prefer to have non-Turkish referees in Turkish football.
Yes.
Now,
he said that to a Turkish referee.
Yeah, the reason he's saying that is because a big derby game in Istanbul, which as we know is really fierce, he wants to put in the referee's mind that if he does one decision that can be seen as biased towards Fenerbahce, he's going to get kind of dog's abuse. But it's interesting to think about how when Mourinho would do a kind of, for want of a better phrase, because I think it's overused, a mind game against a bit of kidology against another manager, we all kind of accept that as part of the slings and arrows of the sport. People would say, well, Mourinho's first press conference is when the game really starts for him and he does it this way. Yeah. But if he's doing it towards a ref as well, is that acceptable or not acceptable? Because he's not actually physically threatening the referee but
it's different from what Fonseca is doing.
Yeah.
But
really are you content with Mourinho saying that stuff about referees before games and stuff like that?
I think that's like inciting a pylon I think you can kind of.
I know what it is, but I'm asking you whether you think he should be punished for it.
Well, it's the Weasley nature of that sort of thing, isn't it? That it's
dog whistle stuff, right?
Dog whistle, indeed. Yeah. So it's very difficult to actually point to something Mourinho said and gone, this specific thing has led to this specific reaction. So I don't really know how you police it, but perhaps you just repeatedly mention that we see what you're doing there, Jose.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you stop it though.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
It's very difficult to have, certain things that you can't touch on in press conferences.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that that VAR and the more sort of tribal nature.
We've come full circle, haven't we?
Because I think we have.
Because it's almost like with the Fonseca thing, the only weapon really an organisation has got to try and stamp that out is by punishing it really severely.
Yes.
And they shouldn't listen to appeals. I mean, if it's an appeal process that's there under the regulation, then fine. But they shouldn't be minded to reduce it on appeal if they feel like the only weapon they've got to combat this kind of thing, and it is only going a certain way, like you said, Marcus, is the only thing they've got to combat it. If you approach a zero tolerance situation. Approach a situation that is zero tolerance way, you might find that it works. And the final thing I would just add is like a great example of that is dissent towards referees by players, which plays into this. There is actually room in the laws of the game for the referees to deal with that. Yeah. They just don't do it. And so if 5 or 6 players surrounded the referee and he just went bang, yellow, bang, second yellow for you, you're off, yellow for you, second yellow for you, you're off. I would like to see what would happen off the back of that.
I know what you mean, yeah, and I think
we all would.
Well, one thing. So if you want an example of a rule change that could come in, is once the game's finished and the referee stood there and everyone's off the pitch, manager can't approach the referee.
Yeah,
it's just it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
That kind of stops it. And I understand the managers are fuming. I get, as you say, Jim, it's a passionate game. We all know that. But for crying out loud, you can't then just say, "Oh, well, you can say what you want" and all that bollocks. But if a referee is physically potentially in danger, like it seemed to be with Fonseca,
well, we've seen that recently.
Zero
as well,
tolerance
in Turkey.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, quite.
All right, let's have a break, and perhaps we'll talk about something a little bit more light-hearted after that. Jim, you got the next question?
I do. It's from Charlie on YouTube. Charlie says, after Alisson's heroics against PSG in the Champions League this week, is he currently the best goalkeeper in world football?
I don't think anybody would laugh at you if you said he was, because he was so imperious against Paris Saint-Germain. It was stunning. I mean, there was that stat, wasn't there, or fact that was going around that Courtois, also in Paris, made as equally imperious performance against Liverpool in the Champions League final, making 9 saves and they won 1-0 with their only shot on target. And I think those two would certainly be up there. I think Alisson, his presence in that goal, I think it's enormous, and he is also enormous as well. Yeah. And I think if I was to use my imagination to its limits and imagine myself as a professional footballer, bear with me, and I'm thinking, which goalkeeper, if you suddenly you've got the ball and you've got a chance to shoot, or you're coming up in front of a goalkeeper, I'd probably say Alisson would be the least likely goalkeeper in the world I'd like to try and put a shot past.
Yeah,
because again, it's not just the size of the guy, because Donnarumma's an enormous bloke as well, but it's the quality and the
agility.
Agility. He's got absolutely everything. And again, there's a presence about him, and I think Courtois is a fantastic goalkeeper. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know. For me, if I'm going on just like to put something between them, if I really had to, I would probably go for Alisson. They're both in the conversation. I think Manuel Neuer, I think, is he's a little bit older now, and you remember that mistake last season against Real Madrid in the Champions League. Of course, it's harsh to say that because Manuel Neuer is one of the greatest goalkeepers of all time, certainly of his generation,
and the godfather of the modern goalkeeping style, really.
Totally. But if we're talking about the here and the now, here and now, I can't stress. And I think with Alisson, for him to make a mistake like that, I think it would just be unthinkable.
Yeah, I mean, he made a couple of mistakes at the Emirates last season. I know there was a high-profile one against, I think, Wolves, maybe the season before that. Mm-hmm. But you really have to go looking for Alisson mistakes. Yeah. Every goalkeeper makes mistakes. He doesn't make many.
Yeah. But having a bit of time out of the team, obviously due to injury and Keller coming in, I think he's come roaring back.
Yeah.
And he is that player who, Liverpool have been so good this season, perhaps they wouldn't have needed it necessarily. And as I say, Keller has been in goal, but he's the type of goalkeeper that if he's between the sticks, you almost add another 10 points on your tally kind of thing.
He doesn't have a weakness, does he? Really, no. That's the the interesting thing about it, I think, looking at him, as you say, he's got that amazing presence, which is a hard thing to quantify, but he's very, very much demonstrably there. His shot stopping is excellent. His cross claiming is really, really dominant. His footwork is obviously like really, really good, to the point where I think it's a little bit underrated. Like people don't really sort of talk about that so much now. His organisation of his defence, obviously, he's got Van Dijk in there, kind of, and they do that as a duo, but he's obviously excellent. He's handsome. He was involved in the goal the other day. He scored a goal a couple of seasons ago.
I mean, if we're really going to try and nitpick, I mean, in terms of distribution, he's obviously not bad at his feet. It's something that I wouldn't think of with Alisson.
No, I think he's good at that.
But he must. But that's what I mean. Like, I'm really sort of thinking, because of all this other stuff, you're thinking more of the traditional goalkeeping things. But actually, his distribution is obviously decent. I mean, again, Donnarumma at the other end is a great goalkeeper as well. Jan Oblak is another one to be mentioned. You start looking at, but again, I'm just mentioning extremely good goalkeepers now.
I feel like an interesting aspect of this, and I'll come on to what I think more broadly in a sec, but he's got like almost 3 times the amount of caps for Brazil as Ederson has.
Yeah. And Edison's only, I think, a year younger than him.
Yeah,
Edison's got 29, Alisson's got 71.
Yeah, and Edison's obviously been at the best club side in the world for a while. My opinion on this is perhaps a little bit controversial, but I'm gonna say it anyway. And it's difficult because you're comparing from different eras, and it's the old Tiger Woods thing that we always talk about. You just want to be part of the conversation. That's all you can ask for, because everyone's got their own opinion. Sure. It's very difficult to quantify, and I think it is difficult to compare him to earlier eras. But I think Alisson's the best goalkeeper to play in the Premier League. Ooh. I think he's better than Courtois. I think Courtois brilliant, but I think Alisson's better.
I think Courtois is the nearest competitor to him. But I would have Alisson above him too.
And while it's very hard to compare, I think he's better than Schmeichel, and I think he's better than Cech.
Yeah, I mean,
they're the stand-up goalkeepers.
I mean, because again, I think this is a really interesting conversation with goalkeepers, because I think recency bias is correct, because
they're asked to do more.
They are asked to do way more. Yeah. Petr Cech's distribution was just fine, because it only needed to be for goalkeepers back then. I imagine Peter Schmeichel was the same. This idea of kind of playing with your feet a bit more. I'm sure some goalkeepers did it to varying standards in the past, but it's a prerequisite now. Alisson's brilliant at it.
I think you could obviously argue that Schmeichel had the presence.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, it was great to see Schmeichel interviewing.
Yeah, it was
annoying that they kept getting talked over. But yeah,
I just think that even the fact that you mentioned that he wasn't at his absolute best at the Emirates that time, I remember that game. What you're thinking about, though, is you've got to throw into the mix that they're asked to do such high-risk stuff now. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they make 1 or 2 mistakes very, very rarely is kind of not really the point.
It's the payoff, isn't it?
Yeah, and I actually just think it's impossible to argue that he's got any real weakness in his game. Mm-hmm. And I was also absolutely in awe. Every single time I've seen him play in the flesh, probably 3 or 4 times, I was absolutely in awe of the presence of him. Like it's almost like and obviously we're mere mortals compared to professional footballers, as you've already touched on, Marcus, but it's just impossible to imagine scoring against him. And I know people do, of course, but I honestly just think, after I saw that PSG performance, which is basically the complete goalkeeping performance, it's the best goalkeeping performance I can remember. I don't actually really have a huge memory of Courtois doing that.
Well, Courtois in the final, I mean, how Liverpool didn't win that final.
Yeah. Obviously, he played a massive role in it, but it's probably a little bit fainter in my mind. I was watching this thinking, we're in the presence of watching absolute greatness here. I don't think there's anyone in world football that can touch him in that position. Although I do concede by the nature of having these kind of conversations, you get people in the comments just going, oh, well, what about that player? Obviously, all these goalkeepers are really good. Yeah. But for me, I would pick Alisson in a world 11 in a goalkeeper that I want to choose for an amazing team.
Temperate wise as well.
Temperament, yeah, good. It wouldn't take me long to make a decision. That's what I can say.
An aesthetic thing I love about Alisson as well is when he's got the all black kit on and he would wear black boots and black gloves. Yeah. He looks like a superhuman.
It's a deliberate decision. It's intimidating. It's channeling the kind of Lev Yashin type idea of how like you are making this a big deal.
How am I going to get past that UFC fighter?
Yeah, I'm a bad guy. I'm a fucking bad guy.
Well, and I think, even though he's a good guy, you would think, but I think with Alisson, the way he, and obviously if they need a goal, he can always pop up with a header. But I think the way he was managed with when Klopp was in charge, I think he benefited of that, because you think of the amount of football that he played, that he has played for Liverpool, and obviously under Klopp when they were going all guns in every single tournament, going very, very far, often winning them, the cup competitions and so on. again, he's 32, so which is not that old for a goalkeeper, but he's played a lot of football. It's that focus, which is why sometimes look at Ederson. Ederson he looked like a world beater, and he's a very good goalkeeper. Don't get me wrong, but in this season, obviously not all him, but in recent seasons, he's not been that guy that he was maybe a few years ago.
I don't think he's been anywhere near his level.
Well, if you remember, then when there was a chat in this country, I don't know if it was like in Brazil, about who's the best goalkeeper, who's the best Brazilian goalkeeper, who should be number one for the Brazil national team, and Alisson got the nod, but there was a lot of people who thought, well, Ederson and so on, which was a fair comment. Whereas as time's gone on, that seems like absolutely not. And I think that again, for a goalkeeper to keep the levels of focus that you need. To mention an England goalkeeper, Joe Hart, he put in some phenomenal performances for Manchester City. But again, to keep the outrageous levels of focus that a goalkeeper needs for so long, that's where the kind of fatigue can set in.
I know.
So Alisson was used very wisely by Klopp, not so much in the cup competitions, and I think that's kept him in good stead, because at 32 he looks, as I say, still the best goalkeeper in the world.
I think Joe, and I know this is not the point you're making, but I think Joe Hart's doing very, very well.
No, but it's a point of goalkeepers' performance having a dip and then maybe not getting it back. That was kind of my point, and I illustrated that.
The 32 is kind of relatively peak years for goalkeepers, though.
Well, you can argue the toss. I mean, as I say, the point I'm making is when you play that amount of football.
It's interesting him and Courtois are the same age and kind of vying for it, I guess.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. So that was, as I say, I'm not saying is Joe Hart in the same category. I'm saying that
short answer to Charlie is yes, he is the best goalkeeper in world football in my opinion, and he's the best goalkeeper to ever play in the Premier League. Again, in my opinion.
I think that's shared by a lot of people.
What about this from Joey on Blue Sky? Hello to you, Joey. With news this week that from this summer onwards, goalkeepers will be allowed 8 seconds from catching the ball to releasing it. How much of an impact do you think this new rule will have in cracking down on time wasting and lowering the tempo of the game?
I think it's not a bad rule change, this, actually. I think there's chat, isn't there, that the referee will do the countdown from 5 seconds. The crowd are going to get involved as well. Until, I don't know, a few months into the new season when everyone's kind of forgot about it. Whatever.
Well, that's what's interesting about this, isn't it? Because actually, that rule, a version of that rule already exists, but the goalkeepers only get 6 seconds. Yeah. So this is being increased, and as you say, it's never enforced. But because the punishment is a corner to the opposition, you have to enforce that. Like denying a team a corner is terrible refereeing.
I think it's better that it'll be a corner because, as you say, it's less. What is it? Only 4% of goals something come from corners. But
it's more impactful. It's a more impactful punishment.
It's a well-weighted punishment, I think, as well.
Yeah, because I think the indirect free kick, which was what it was meant to be, I think that's too consequential. Maybe.
But the issue. So sorry to cut in, but it's good that they are focusing on essentially the fact that time wasting is happening too much. But again, I think that for some reason, the people who decide all these things don't want to focus on the things that actually matter. And then when they do occasionally focus on some things that sort of matter, they don't enforce it anyway. And so we touched upon this just before the break, talking about, the idea of yellow cards for dissent. Those laws still exist.
Do you think this is a bit gimmicky almost?
Well, because this law still exists. It already exists in a slightly different way and it's not enforced.
But changing it to you get a corner against you rather than
but that only matters if they're not going to do what they always do, which is enforce it for about 3 games at the start of each season, and everyone just forgets about it.
But is this a way of trying to get it enforced then?
Well, we'll see.
Just almost sort of changing it so everybody's refreshed, and in fact they've given a goalkeeper an extra couple of seconds.
My point is there's loads of things that happen in football where players seek to get an advantage that aren't punished. A player shuffling 10 yards up the pitch with a throw-in, rarely punished. A foul throw, rarely punished. A player putting a ball for a free kick in a different position, rarely punished.
I don't know, I think they're a little bit hotter on that these days.
Fine, but it's not always done.
I understand your point.
There's loads of things that are interpreted as part of how the laws are in football. You can flip it the other way around and say this is probably quite bad time in saying this after what happened to Mateta, but as a general rule, anyone who pulls out a feather duster within 10 yards of a goalkeeper as a free kick, and no reason for it, it just happens. So the only way this matters in any meaningful way is if it's enforced, and if you are genuinely worried about time wasting, there's far more effective ways to do this, and I just have a very deep cynicism that it'll actually catch on.
So your issue is about the enforcement of it.
Of course.
What do you think of then? Should they just currently enforce what the current rules are, or do you think this?
Well, they're
rule
certainly
change?
capable of doing that.
But but what do you think of the actual rule itself? The ruling. So not the enforcement of it, the actual allowing a goalkeeper an extra couple of seconds.
I think you have to have something in place to stop the goalkeeper holding on to the ball for too long, obviously.
Which is already there.
Yeah, but it's not been enforced. And I think the punishment of a corner is more impactful than the punishment of what I presume was probably an indirect free kick before. But then it's very hard for me to say because
the reason
it's very hard for me to say because the previous iteration of this rule was never enforced.
Sure,
I can't remember a single instance of it being enforced.
Right, but I think the reason why it probably wasn't enforced that much is because an indirect free kick in the box or something like that is too big of a punishment.
Yeah.
And I think that's why a referee, because that becomes a headline.
In which case, then it's a good idea.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's a good idea, because I think if you have an indirect free kick, which is quite a moment in football, and it's a very rare thing when an indirect free kick is given in the box. That can change a game straight away. Whereas if you argue whether the ball went out for a corner and was it off that player or that player, that's quickly forgotten about when the corner's taken. For obvious reasons, you've got to get on with the game. And I think it's a less contentious decision. Therefore, I think clearly the powers that be, fabulous, have thought, right, this is not being enforced. How can we change it? And I think I think it's a decent change. I think it will have an impact on cracking down on time wasting. So that's my answer to Joey's question.
It also really comes into play when you've got a team that's winning and a team that's losing, right? Mm-hmm. So it's part of the study into it. They were saying that it was a Brighton v Man United game, and it was Andre Onana in goal for United and Jason Steele in goal for Brighton. It was a game that Brighton won. And as the game kind of transpired and Brighton were leading, Jason Steele was holding the ball for 15 seconds and Andre Onana was holding it for under 5 seconds anyway, because they were trying to get the game going, right? So it's going to probably have an impact on teams that are winning more than anything else.
They trialled it fairly extensively and apparently it was rarely an issue. I think it only happened 3 times. So maybe it'll be something that we don't see that often. I do think it will be an interesting development to see. It's an opportunity for shenanigans involving what is obstruction and what is not. Mm-hmm. If you're more aware that the goalkeeper's only got this amount of time, I think teams are going to be wise to that.
While this chat's been going on, the whole time I've just had images of Jordan Pickford in my head. Yeah, doing what he's doing. All right, so let's have a quick break, and we will answer more of your questions and get some birthday five-a-side team updates. Yes, we talked about our birthday five-a-side teams last week. Just to remind you of my team, I've got Ochoa in goal, the Mexican goalkeeper.
Nice.
Mark Gay at the back, Lamine Yamal and Craig Bellamy playing behind Che Adams with Roberto Martinez as manager. The halftime entertainment from MF Doom.
That's quality.
And Harrison Ford in the stands cheering them on. So not too shabby. Jim, remind us of yours.
I had Gabriel Martinelli, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, Jason McAteer, Mario Hermoso. I picked him as he's an actual defender. I also had the options of, I think, Marco Borriello. I had Delia Smith doing catering and motivation. Paul McCartney for the halftime show, and post-match write-up from the film critic Roger Ebert.
Yeah, good, but no goalkeeper.
No, I'm going in goal.
I was confused about the goalkeeper thing because some of the teams I saw on the Discord, which we'll come on to, were some of them were choosing goalkeeper, some of them weren't. Do you want, so with mine?
So go on, what's yours?
Do you want it with goalkeeper or without?
Well, it's up to you, mate. It's your five-a-side team.
You can have a couple of subs.
And your birthday.
Yeah, true.
By the way, it was Paulo Fonseca's birthday, his 52nd birthday, when he got banned for that.
Treat yourself, mate.
Wrap it up.
Yeah. Go on.
So I've got. So am I going to go for the goalkeeper or not? The goalkeeper's not really that great, so I probably won't go for him. But the goalkeeper was David Stockdale.
Come on, that's all right.
Yeah, so I've gone for Rob Holding.
Okay.
Sean Davis.
Right.
Who played midfield for Portsmouth, so I had to pick him.
Yeah.
Alex Grimaldo.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah. Julian Draxler.
This is a tournament you're not going to win, but Draxler's not a bad player though.
Henrik Larsson up front.
Ooh. Okay.
He'd be brilliant at five-a-side, wouldn't he?
He would be brilliant.
And the only fucking famous person. Well, I could have Formula One's driver Juan Pablo Montoya doing like a parade around after the game.
If it's at the London Stadium, you could have that.
Yeah, and I could do halftime entertainment. Could be a reading from George R.R. Martin.
Oh, lovely!
He's got the same birthday as me.
A reading, which is something that is an untapped thing in football, perhaps. So that's Luke's
spoken word performance from the 94-year-old George R.R. Martin.
Yeah, halftime show at the Super Bowl. I've finally finished it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you've all been in touch. This was quite a popular thing. Pretty Visitor, who's whose birthday's on the 5th of Feb, said
this is the most top-heavy side I've ever seen.
Incredible, this side.
Perhaps putting the pretty in pretty visitor. So we've got Cristiano Ronaldo, Carlos Tevez, Neymar, Patrick Roberts, and Vedran Chorluka with a lot of work to do. Manager Sven-Göran Eriksson.
Oh.
I mean,
That's great. That gets him over the line, surely, as the best team.
you're going to hear this a lot from me. No goalkeeper.
No.
That's the only thing I've got. That is strong.
But if you're dominating possession...
Halftime show, Kevin Gates.
Yeah, I'm not really that aware of his work.
No, me neither.
Rapper, don't really know his work, so I couldn't comment on that.
Oh, well. But still, it's there. It's there.
A rapper going by Kevin is good by me, though.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. Moon, who's big Discorder Moon, his birthday is the day before mine on the 12th of July. Vinicius Jr., James Rodriguez.
Nice.
Nico Williams.
He's not putting the work in at five-a-side, though, is he, Rodriguez? That's a double-edged sword, that.
That's true.
Is that Nico Williams? Which one, though?
No, the Spanish one.
Okay, what's better?
Yeah. Christian Vieri. Oh. And Bebe. The forgotten man.
That is
a good
very
side.
good team.
Yeah,
He
they
said,
can
look,
make Bebe look good.
I love this because he could have balanced it out and put Luke Shaw in there, but he said he'll be injured for the game. Marco Silva in charge.
Nice.
And Brock Lesnar on the doors, which is beautiful. Last one from Marie, of course, huge on the Discord.
Yeah, the mother of the Discord.
The mother of the Discord, yeah. A true friend of the Ramble all the way.
And not because she's old. I don't know how old she is. I'm just saying she comes across like she's very motherly.
Oh, indeed, yeah. And visited us, of course, and went to our live show last September from the States. She's got Matt Sells in goal. Come on.
He's having a great season.
Goalkeeper.
Good goalkeeper as well.
Yeah.
That's a game changer.
Exactly. Levi Colwell.
Yeah, again, good player.
Yeah, absolutely.
Current player.
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
He'll get you a goal.
Jamal Musiala.
Quality.
Oh, and you need a bit of shithousery at five-a-side.
Yeah.
Pepe
Could be a brilliant five-a-side shithouse till he's about 70, so I'm having that.
Yeah, manager, she said, well, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would have to be player manager.
Yeah.
Halftime show, Johnny Cash. It would have to be a Johnny Cash hologram, as Marie says.
That's great.
I think that's the winner.
Yeah.
I think that's
such
the
a well-balanced team.
It's a balanced side, got a bit of quality in there, and it's got Pepe.
Yeah, and if you want to get involved in the Discord, you can go to patreon.com/Football Ramble and sign up for just $5 a month and get access to all that kind of stuff and plenty more besides.
So, yeah, Marie has won the birthday.
Congratulations, Marie. Sure, that'll be a great thing to remember.
Indeed, yeah. Right, let's have some more questions. Jim, you got one from Tim.
I do. Tim says on Instagram, if you had to support another club other than yours, which would you choose? Painful question. Really painful question.
Man City, or am I too late for that?
I would find it very hard to support another club.
Why don't we, Pompey, so you're owed a bit of glory. Just give it Real Madrid.
Well, the thing is, to answer this question seriously, the only way you know whether you genuinely support someone is when you feel it in your gut when they lose.
Yeah.
Because anyone could pretend to celebrate a goal. There's loads of reasons to celebrate a goal. We went up to when Newcastle played PSG in the Champions League, and the atmosphere was so amazing. We got quite into it, and it was amazing that Newcastle won. And people would have thought we were fans, but we weren't. But you don't care if they lose because they're not your team. So for me, it's hard to fabricate that. I think the boring answer would be I would probably just start supporting Gosport Borough, who are my local side, who I go and see quite a lot anyway.
I get what you're saying about the feeling bad, but you're not going to have that. So I think you've got to start somewhere. And is there a side where you kind of think, I'm glad they won, right? I hope they won. Do you see what I mean? That's where you start. That's where you would start.
So the local team to where I live is Crystal Palace.
I thought you might say Palace because they're a likeable side.
My mum supports West Ham. But I don't want to support them.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I think Palace is a
really
nice one.
strange because I was also going to pick Palace. They would be a team. I would want a team that I could go and see. I grew up deep in West Ham territory, so while I do have an affection for West Ham, I don't think it's so great that I could actually join the ranks of their supporters.
They won the World Cup as well.
They did win the World Cup. But Arsenal won the World Cup in 1998, so it's kind of neutral, isn't it?
Yeah.
I lived in Brighton for a bit though, so I might not be accepted by the Crystal Palace faithful. So
I thought you were going to say Palace or Brighton.
Yeah. I think they'd probably find it very hard to muster an appeal on that, Jim. Guys, I did live in Brighton. I don't think they can.
You bought your ticket and you can just shout, can you sit down, mate? Can you sit down? That's what would happen.
I wish that bloke who sits behind you at Arsenal support another team.
God, yeah.
Absolutely outrageous.
Take him down. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Marcus, what about you?
Chelsea. Now, Luke, you've got the last question.
From Nathan on X. Hello to you, Nathan. Not sure why you're still using X, but that's your business. After Thomas Tuchel was seen dancing the night away with his Champions League winning Chelsea squad, which former England manager would you most like to go on a night out with?
Wouldn't be Roy Hodgson, would it?
Boring.
No, listen, I'm gonna diverge from that. I actually think.
You like reading books.
Well, it's not just that. It's just that I think it depends what you mean by a night out.
Lovely little trip down the river.
Yeah.
Because my answer would have genuinely been, I'd love to go for a lovely long dinner with the great Sir Bobby Robson.
That'd be nice.
Right? That's a better night out for me than going out on the piss with Sam Allardyce. You know what I mean?
You've changed.
I have changed.
No, but I think,
I'm older now.
But I think Robson would be a better raconteur and stuff. I think Hodgson would be fine. I think,
I think Roy Hodgson would be very interesting.
Yeah.
I think Hodgson would be, and I think that a Hodgson and I mean a barbecue with around Hodgson's with Ray Lewington doing the meat would be great.
Sure.
Absolutely.
But I mean, that's not really a night out, I suppose. We are interpreting the question. I'm tempted to say Sven. But then I would see things that just nobody should really be seeing, quite frankly.
I don't think he would. I think suddenly Sven wouldn't be there anymore.
Yeah, like Pete. It's like Pete.
Yeah. That's
for different reasons.
So I think so. I might choose
Keegan.
Yeah, Keegan. I was building up to Keegan.
You've worked with Keegan though, so you spent time with him before.
Yeah, I mean, It was a
share a sandwich, Marks and Spencer sandwich or something backstage.
We might have done.
There you go. So technically, you have been out for dinner with a England manager.
No, I haven't.
But it'll end up like The Hangover or something, though, won't it? There'll be some sort of horrible shenanigans happen.
Yeah, but it wouldn't happen to
beyond
you.
your control.
It wouldn't happen to you.
But you might be you might be collateral damage in it.
What about Peter Taylor?
Peter Taylor would be nice, but yeah, I think Terry Venables would be a brilliant night out as well.
Yeah,
a couple of sangrias on the veranda.
He used to have his own hotel.
Oh, yeah.
Terry Eltel used to have his own beautiful hotel, luxury hotel, didn't he, as well? So
yeah, the Eltel Hotel.
There's a lot of candidates. There's a lot of candidates. Capello would be funny.
So, yeah, one of my very...
Taking the ketchup off you.
Yeah, no chance. I love Gareth Southgate, but I don't think that's a particularly...
It might be, as Luke sort of touched on
but you're tapping him up. You're tapping him up for stories, aren't you?
Yeah, true. I think
it might be more our speed these days, Gareth Southgate.
Mine would honestly be Sir Bobby Robson with a lovely long dinner.
Lovely. One of my very, very niche ambitions in life is to stay in the same hotel on a holiday as Ali McCoist and get chatting to him round the pool, round the bar.
That'd be great.
You just, you stay there for a week. Oh, Ali's here. Oh, lovely to see you, Ali. You see them every day. Feel like mates, never see each other again.
That'd be nice.
Classic holiday.
Yeah,
I think Venables would be similar.
Do you remember when you...
Similar vibe.
You basically just want a holiday romance with Ali McCoist.
Just want a holiday.
Okay.
You tried to have a holiday romance with Arsene Wenger.
Yeah.
That didn't work.
I think to say I tried to have a holiday romance with a man I met in a hotel lobby is a bit of a stretch.
Usually it's a hotel lobby where it starts, Jim.
But you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Yeah, if he had been receptive to your overture,
he blocked my charms, didn't he?
He was like,
I went in too hard.
One word answers for every question you asked him. So he just walked off.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Strode off.
It's like you on Tinder, isn't it?
You can respond, Jim.
It's just such shit banter. I just want it to die of its own accord.
You succeeded in that, Jim. You succeeded in that. Brilliant.
Oh dear. Oh, excellent. So here we go. No one said Glenn Hoddle.
No, that's the kind of
again, it'd be really interesting.
I was doing your Sam Allardyce impression there. That's what it'd be like when you're a night out with Sam Allardyce.
Yeah. I think Keegan would be a good shout. Keegan or Sven for me.
I love it when you look at the list of like England managers and it's like there's managers in there like Harold Wilson, Peter Taylor, Stuart Pearce, and they've all managed one game and they've all got an asterisk next to their name because it's caretaker.
Yep.
Sam Allardyce, one game, no asterisk.
No asterisk, yeah.
Pearce would be an interesting one.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, interesting as in like you'd have stories afterwards. They wouldn't necessarily be good. Though.
He'd take you to a punk gig.
Yeah. Actually, that might be fun.
I had a really terrifying experience with Stuart Pearce once.
Really?
So I'll tell you that story. Where I was doing live radio on Wembley Way. I was presenting the show ahead of England, an England game at Wembley. And what the nature of it was, as people were walking up Wembley Way, the producer of the radio show would come in and bring them in.
Yeah.
Oh, found so and so.
They're so busy, is it? For obvious reasons.
And they brought in. At one point, they said during the ad break.
Do you remember which England game it was? Just for the.
It might have been against Belarus in the qualifier.
Oh right, big one.
Yeah. But it was at one point. That's where one of the Henry Winter stories comes from. Because Henry Winter it's like the fourth time I'd worked with him, and every single time I worked with him, he
don't know where this is going.
Yeah, just completely forgot who I was. So he came on for a bit, and it was a bit fucking shit because like, well, I was supposed to. Henry, we do kind of work together before. We do kind of know each other. He completely ignored me.
Nice to meet you, Jake. I'd imagine.
Yeah, exactly that kind of thing. And then they brought in Trevor Sinclair and Stuart Pearce.
Right.
In the ad break. And I was like, good to meet you, how you doing? I've never worked with any of them before. And they're both standing there, and I was just going to interview them about the England game at the break. And I off the top of my head, I was trying to think of a really witty kind of intro for them. And I said as we came back on air, I said to the people listening, I'm delighted to say, got two gentlemen joining me in the studio now who've got 90 England caps between them, Stuart Pearce and Trevor Sinclair, right? Well, Trevor Sinclair's got about 12 caps, right? Stuart Pearce was not happy with me saying that.
What, as in, because he thought you were taking the piss of Trevor Sinclair?
No, he thought I was I was
undermining him,
essentially diminishing his England career.
Oh, I see. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, because he's got...
There's me trying to give him the benefit.
Yeah,
that feels overly sensitive.
And he absolutely stonewalled me for the whole interview.
Oh.
He was like, he did not like the cut of my jib whatsoever. So if I turned up again on a night out with him,
that'd be bad.
I'm either going to get filled in or it's going to be boring.
And if he does remember you, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
I've never met Stuart Pearce. I have met Trevor Sinclair very briefly, and so the last I saw of Trevor Sinclair, I was stood on a sort of makeshift stage with him and DJ Brandon Block.
Oh, yeah, I remember you saying, yeah.
And England had beaten Germany in the Euros in 2020. There was what can be described by paying customers had turned into a mob.
Yeah.
Tables were overturned. Everything was kicking off. We were meant to do a post-match chat after about talking about the game. There was no point in fading up the mics. It was all everyone was singing "It's Coming Home." The whole place was being taken apart. I looked around. Trevor Sinclair looked at me. I looked at Brandon Block, and he just went, "Our work here is done." And off we went into the night.
Lovely.
So Brandon Block is the answer.
He's always the answer. Yeah. Thank you very much for listening to the Football Ramble Mailbag, part of the Acast Creator Network. Luke and I will be back on Monday with Pete and Vish to react to the weekend's football. And please do send us your responses, opinions and questions for next week's episode, and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. We love it when you get involved. We love the questions, of course. And if you respond with your birthday, five-a-side teams and so on and so forth, we love you dearly. Have a marvellous weekend. See you Monday.